Okay, folks, we're gonna do one from the Liberal Circus again. Fitting, David Pakman gets schooled again. Um, should be a good one. I mean, he is losing some serious traction since the election. So here we go.
Why the hell would I take a test? Where you're taking cocaine or not? What do you think?
I love his introductions. And he took that hat home.
Circus, a conservative channel dedicated to showcasing the
Look at that
insanity of liberalism.
God.
One wacky liberal dingbat at a time. Even though Trump was completely exonerated of any ties to Russia, in 2016 Russian collusion claims were totally debunked. The damage has been done. The Democrats have been brainwashed to believe that conservatives are nothing more than Russian sympathizers and propagandists.
But yes, anybody with half a brain knows that all they're doing is using it to bury him. They know it's not true. They know a shit ton of things aren't true. David Pakman's aware. But these people that get led around by the nose, the sheep, that can't think for themselves, echoes, MSNBC and all these YouTubers that, would you call them contributors? What's a good name? I don't know. Let's go.
They have been brainwashed to believe that Russia is pure evil and that anyone who even tries to understand Russia's viewpoint is a traitor. Enter Senor Pakman.
Tucker Carlson, the former Fox News propagandist, has bravely and courageously returned to Russia to produce
I guarantee you he wouldn't have the balls to go to Russia.
More pro-Putin propaganda. And
you should see the story about the time his umbrella got stolen by a homeless person. Oh my God, what a friggin' pussy.
Question American democracy.
Talk about the pot calling the kettle black. David Pakman is 100% a propagandist.
Without a doubt.
The dictionary definition of a propagandist is a person who promotes or publicizes a particular organization or cause. Example given, a highly persuasive political propagandist. Is that not exactly what Pakman does? So Pakman calling Tucker a propagandist is like a rapist calling someone else a sexual predator. It's like a serial killer accusing someone else of being prone to violence for having a fist fight.
This is Tucker Carlson's unique brand of, it's not journalism, but it's what Putin might call beautiful journalism deserving of a standing ovation.
So, traveling to a foreign country to interview a high-ranking member of a foreign government
he is a snide bastard.
Journalism. And it's not brave or courageous to travel to a country that is hostile to your country. Shall we again consider the dictionary definition of the word journalism? A person who writes for newspapers, magazines, or news websites, or prepares news to be broadcast. So Tucker's not preparing news to be broadcast here?
So here is Tucker looking extremely sunburned, explaining why he's back.
And has had way more experience than open mouth, closed eyes has. I mean, what did this child do before YouTube?
In Russia, what has happened since his last propaganda trip to Russia, and this is very it's inextricably wrapped up in...
I know what he did. He played with cuckoo clocks from Switzerland.
Trumpian foreign policy, MAGA's view of our traditional Western liberal allies versus authoritarian strongmen. So there's a lot of meat on this bone for us to talk about. Let's listen to Tucker's brave declaration.
I got some meat on the bone for the fucking little queer.
About being back in Russia.
Since we left Russia, Moscow, where we are now, in February after interviewing Vladimir Putin, We've watched from the United States as the Biden administration has driven the U.S. ever closer to a nuclear conflict with Russia, the country that possesses the world's largest nuclear arsenal.
Now,
Pay attention to how clean their cities are. No homeless around, no garbage, no poo piles, no needles. Look how nice and clean.
of course, that already, I mean, that one sentence is, wait a second. So, Russia invades Ukraine, alludes to the possibility maybe of having to use nukes.
Russia is not going to use nukes. If they would use nukes, it would be a small, limited, suitcase kind of style thing. There's a thing called MAD, Mutual Assured Destruction. He is not a friggin' madman and looking to die.
The United States and our allies say, "Hey, Ukraine needs needs help defending itself. Let's help them do that." It's the US's fault that Russia might become even more aggressive when Russia is the invading force.
Why?
Yeah. David Pakman is definitely aware of the agreement that was made that they would not move closer to Russia. And he's well aware, but he's not going to tell his audience of sheep.
Why did Russia invade Ukraine? Why has Russia hinted at being prepared to use nuclear weapons? You fucking retard. Look, I agree. Ukraine has every right to defend itself as it sees fit. But what place does the United States have
Look at how goddamn
in funding
clean.
the war in Ukraine, especially when most American taxpayers don't want it? Ukraine isn't even a member of NATO. We have no obligation to defend Ukraine. If the United States...
And that's a deal breaker for Russia, people. If you're not aware of what's going on, you don't need to know everything what you need to know. Because Russia is not going to tolerate, just like we didn't tolerate Russia being in Cuba, where that is totally crazy to think that Russia is going to deal with that.
is putting U.S. weapons and tech into the hands of Ukraine, including missiles that are nuclear capable and could threaten the very existence of Russia, which could evoke a nuclear attack from Russia.
It has accelerated ever since, and it's reached its apogee so far in the weeks after Trump's election. He is now the president-elect. In that time, just a few weeks ago, the Biden administration, American military personnel launched missiles into mainland Russia and killed at least a dozen Russian soldiers. So we are...
Now, I mean, even that soldiers were killed during a war that Russia started. I'm not for killing.
I thought we weren't going to have boots on the ground. I thought we weren't going to give them planes. I thought we weren't going to give them anything that could go over the border and into Russia. See how this is creeping? We did the same thing in every other war, on top of all the money we give them. But we don't have enough for our people. Hence the hurricane people, hence the fires in Hawaii. But yet, Hawaii still voted Democrat, I believe.
I'm not for violence. I'm not a fan of rockets and guns and bombs and grenades. And...
Look at him launching his body. Jesus God.
But Russia started a war and some of their soldiers died.
Isn't it rather interesting how the people who hate America most, those who believe that America is inherently racist, misogynistic, and xenophobic?
Yep, every freaking one of them. I don't know which one's the worst. I really don't.
Are the ones who blindly...
I mean, they're all harmless as far as, like, you know, physical confrontation or anything like that. But, oh my God, I really don't know.
Defend Ukraine without even learning both sides of the story. Remember the old cliche, there are two sides to every story, and then there's the truth. Pakman is entitled to have his own opinion, but to imply that conservatives are anti-American or traitors for simply wanting to know both sides of the story.
He has more than an opinion. He influences people to believe things that are not true, and he knows it because he knows how weak-minded most of his audience is. And look at how much of an audience he lost after the election. He was crying like a bitch. Huge numbers. Now he's, kind of backpedaling it. A lot of people are starting to think they were bots.
Is intellectual laziness at best.
And Tucker goes, look at the crazy stuff Biden's doing. Russia started a war and some of its soldiers died. Is there any scenario where we can say that's war that would more closely and more accurately represent that than this? No, but it's Biden's fault.
Hey, Astard, if you weren't a partisan propagandist for the Democrats, you'd be able to consider that Joe Biden's assistance to Ukraine appears to be largely related to Hunter Biden's past involvement with Burisma, a Ukrainian energy company, without Hunter having any qualifications for his position. If you weren't a partisan hack, Senor Pakman, you'd be able to consider that Hunter Biden's blanket 10-year pardon appears to be a cover-up of Joe Biden using his influence as vice president to benefit his son in Ukraine. If you were not a partisan hack, Senor Pakman, you'd be able to see that Joe Biden, as vice president under President Obama, played a leading role in United States policy toward Ukraine.
You're freaking right.
You'd be able to see that Joe Biden, as vice president, called for the removal of Ukraine's top prosecutor, Viktor Shokin.
To this day, I can't believe he got away with this.
To withhold $1 billion in U.S. aid.
And so I got Ukraine. And I remember going over convincing our team, or others, to convincing them that we should be providing for loan guarantees. And I went over, I guess, the 12th, 13th time to Kyiv, and I was supposed to announce that there was another $1 billion loan guarantee. And I had gotten a commitment from Poroshenko and from Yatsenyuk that they would take action against the state prosecutor, and they didn't. So they said they were walking out to the press conference. I said, no, I said, we're not going to give you the $1 billion. They said, you have no authority. You're not the president. The president said. I said, call him. I said, I'm telling you, you're not getting $1 billion.
What a cocky bastard. And he didn't have the authority outside of Brock giving it to him. And you got to wonder why Brock gave him that authority. You really do. Joe's always been a cocky son of a bitch. They, always called him gaff and all that. He wasn't gaffs. He's a fucking moron. Everybody thinks that Trump, this all started when, he was elected. Man, it went on long before that. This is all personal vendetta shit. Joe's pissed.
I said, you're not getting the $1 billion. I'm going to be leaving here. And I think it was, 6 hours. I said, I'm leaving in 6 hours. If the prosecutor's not fired, you're not getting the money. Oh, son of a bitch. Got fired.
Now, you tell me that story doesn't sound something like the story you heard about Hunter doing that phone call to that China guy.
Indeed, Senor Pakman. If you were not a partisan propagandist for the Democratic Party, you'd be able to see that Biden's strong support for Ukraine throughout its conflict with Russia is influenced by past family ties to the country and an attempt to shield...
And I just thought of something. They like to say Trump's a gangster. What the hell did that just sound like to you? That's fucking gangster talk.
Himself and his son from scrutiny regarding the Biden crime family corruption. Understand this. It appears that we are on the verge of nuclear war with the world's premier nuclear power, all because of Joe Biden's corruption.
To most Americans in a hot war with Russia, an undeclared war, a war you did not vote for and that most Americans don't want, but that is ongoing. And because of that war, because of the fact that the U.S. military is killing Russians in Russia right now, we are closer to nuclear war than at any time in history. Far closer than we were during the Cuban Missile Crisis. That would mean the elimination of Russia, the United States, and most of the rest of the world. We felt there must be someone behind the scenes in Washington working to make sure that this conflict doesn't become a nuclear holocaust. But we found out that no, in fact, there is nobody. Tony Blinken, the current Secretary of State, cut off all contact between the U.S. and Russian governments. There is no...
Now, people, think that out. Just think that out. Why would you do that? You want this problem to exist.
No back channel, there is no conversation, there hasn't been for more than 2 years. That's shocking. Meanwhile, most Americans have no access to any perspective other than that granted to them by NBC News and the New York Times. They don't know how close we are. They don't know the Russian perspective. We've been trying for over a year to get that perspective out to American news consumers. We've also tried for over a year to get an interview with Zelensky, the president of Ukraine. We've attacked that from a bunch of different angles. We've spoken to a lot of different people around him, had dinner with them. We've been in talks continuously, and those efforts have been thwarted by the U.S. government. The American embassy in Kiev, which our tax dollars pay for, told the Zelensky government, no, you may not do the interview. You can talk to CNN, you can't talk to us. So we've been unable to speak to him.
Did you catch that?
Yeah, and Hillary made that comment. Tucker is a useful idiot.
Tucker says he's been trying to interview Zelensky for more than a year to document his side of the story, as any real journalist would want to do. But the United States government will not allow Zelensky to speak to Tucker. Zelensky's government is only allowed to speak to our press. First of all, that tells you almost everything you need to know right there. I'm 40 years old, and I've seen a lot of censorship. And I can tell you with total confidence that never have the good guys been the ones who were doing the censorship.
So we came back to Moscow yesterday to interview the foreign minister of Russia, Sergey Lavrov.
One of the biggest propagandists that is it. If you think about who are the biggest Russian propagandists, where every word has to be verified. If Sergey Lavrov tells you even the most minor uncontroversial things, you would still want to verify it. That's how dishonest that guy is.
Longest serving foreign minister in the world. He's been a part of this government for 25 years. He's been in the diplomatic corps for over 40. And ask him, where exactly are we? Are we headed toward an unprecedented conflict between Russia and the United States? Is there any way to peel Russia back from the east, from the sphere of China, back into the west? Is that alliance permanent? And does the election of Donald Trump mean an end to this war, which is reshaping the world, the U.S. economy, the global economy, and
Look at that
risking the
smug
life
look
of every person on this planet?
You know, whether he doesn't like Trump, does like Trump, which he doesn't, but I mean, wouldn't you think he'd be happy to even contemplate the idea that Trump could stop this war? Because Trump's coming. But no, he just sits here with a smug look on his face like, yeah, whatever. No.
Not possible. Yeah. We just walked out of that interview. It's absolutely fascinating. It's coming very soon. We hope you'll watch.
Very soon. So, as usual, Tucker Carlson spreading the typical pro-Kremlin propaganda with all sorts of accusations against...
I'm telling you, this guy's a Democrat shill. He's got to be. He has got to be.
...against the United States, saying it's the U.S. who killed Russian soldiers.
What a fucking idiot.
Saying we're closer to nuclear war than at any time in history, which I don't know to be true.
It doesn't matter whether or not you know it to be true. Every leading expert says we're closer to nuclear Armageddon right now than at any time before. Common sense screams this truth from every rooftop in the world. Look, I'll put it like this. 1 + 1 = 2. It does not matter whether David Pakman and the Democrat libtards agree with that equation or not.
These are the same people that don't know what a woman is. They'll argue that there can be something more than a man and a woman.
1 + 1 = 2, whether you understand it, disagree with it, or hate it or not.
I mean, there is no doubt that Putin, in his belligerence earlier in this war against Ukraine, did allude to bigger, more powerful weapons. He certainly did that. I don't know if we're really closer to nuclear war than at any time in history, but we have to zoom out and consider that this is the type of rhetoric that not only downplays Russia's role in its own brutal invasion of Ukraine, that really is the catalyst. Tucker will never tell you that.
I love how Pac-Man's eyes shift over to his talking points that have been prepared for him.
Oh, yeah.
Presumably by the CIA and or the DNC.
He was on PBD, and PBD pretty much shut him up because he doesn't have paperwork in front of him. He doesn't have all that stuff in his head. PBD's got it all in his head. This guy will rattle off all kinds of shit and not have the info to back it up. He's all textbook shit.
I want to remind you that this pro-Kremlin propaganda from Tucker is not new. Here's Tucker at a Moscow grocery store some months ago, and this is a classic. They say everything's bad, but look at this beautiful grocery store. This is a classic out of the authoritarian propaganda playbook.
Yeah, and the left was absolutely livid that Tucker went over and did this interview. Absolutely livid. They even tried to stop him.
We've seen this in North Korea. We've seen it in Venezuela. We've seen it in Cuba. Here it is in Russia. This was Tucker.
Didn't Newsom do it in California when China was coming in? Cleaned up all San Francisco, I believe it was. San Francisco went nuts. It was done in a week. They've been bitching about it for years.
So a long-standing feature, maybe the longest-standing feature of Cold War propaganda in the West was the Soviet grocery store. No products, no choices, shoddily made things. And it wasn't actually propaganda, it was real. And you can look up the pictures on the internet if you want. So we thought it would be interesting to take a look at a contemporary, modern-day, 2024 Russian grocery store 2 years into sanctions. Here we go.
See, old Packerman can't handle this truth.
And you get it back when you put the cart back.
We have that around here.
So it's free, but there's an incentive to return it and not just bring it to your homeless encampment.
Cool.
We have it at a store called Aldi's.
By the way, some of you know I've been to Aruba a few times. It's the same thing there. It's the whole like you put a coin in and then you get the coin back, and that it's proper incentives, and it's not unique to Russia. Okay, democratic places also have the same cart scheme.
Grocery cart escalator.
Thanks for pointing that out, Davey.
I'm figuring this out now. Where the wheels don't move, they lock on the grocery cart escalator. Look, Ma, no hands.
Anyway, so Tucker does the thing where he walks through and it's filled with products. This is a classic. Okay?
See what I mean?
You can go and
gonna
see
cruise right on through
of supporters of the Maduro, Chavez regimes in Venezuela going to grocery stores. It's the same thing. They go, look, they tell us that everything's bad, and despite all these sanctions, look at this beautiful olive oil that's here. Of course, when you look more deeply, the olive oil costs what the average person in the country makes in a month. So, yes, a lot of these places have grocery stores for the elites and for rich people and for foreigners. You can see it in Cuba. You can see it in North Korea.
And all of that is true, but it doesn't invalidate what Tucker is showing here.
Yeah.
Two or more things can be true at once. The point that Tucker is making is that Western sanctions have not crippled Russia the way most Americans have been told they have through Mockingbird press outlets like CNN, NBC, ABC, and CBS.
Not to mention, I don't know about in you guys' neck of the woods, but I'm living in Pennsylvania right now. I lived in Arizona, and both of the locations that I have lived, you have grocery stores that are for the blue collar working person, where you can get deals and discounts, and then you have your high end grocery store. So, same deal. You got some better ones, and you got just enough.
So let's zoom out here. What we have is continued weaponization from...
I'll guarantee you, he's not one to go to a grocery store and buy something on sale, coupons, anything like that. Yeah, no, I'll bet you he is top of the line everything.
From people like Tucker.
He should invest in a fucking razor, because growing that kind of fucking beard looks fucking asinine, especially on a twat like that.
And the MAGA people and others about the idea of global alliances. NATO is obsolete, and this is unfair, and they're not paying their fair share, and actually everything's really great in Russia and kind of interesting. This is what we are to expect for the next 4 years. It's what they did last time. It's what they're going to do again.
Got that, ladies and gentlemen? Seeking the truth is un-American. Stop asking questions, close your eyes, and go back to sleep. Your government, through ABC, CBS, and NBC only, will tell you what to think about this.
Well, that has happened in all of our previous administrations. Even, Bush, which, he sucked too. But yeah, give me a thumbs up, comment, subscribe. I sure could use the additional subscribers. Kind of want things to start taking off faster now that I actually think it is doing better than what I never intended this. It all started out as a joke, kind of. But yeah, check it out.